Imagine you're standing in your kitchen, holding a small, silver, rectangular tin. You pull the metallic key, hearing that decisive, rhythmic click as the lid curls back. Inside sits a dense, pinkish block of preserved meat, shimmering under the light with a scent of heavy salt and ancient iron. You call it corned beef, but as you slice into it, a frustrating question naturally rises. Where is the corn? You see the beef, you taste the brine, but there isn't a single golden grain of maize in sight. For generations, this name has acted as a linguistic phantom, leading people to expect a rustic stew while they hold a uniform block of salted history. This unassuming object carries a past far more complex than its simple packaging suggests, a saga of global trade routes, military survival, and a single word that shifted its meaning over 1,000 years, while the flavour remained frozen in time. Today, we're going to uncover why this humble staple wears such a misleading title, and how corn became the secret code for something else entirely. Stay curious about the simple things.
I'm Edward, and this is QC Project Simple Things.
In the modern world, the word corn belongs to the vast golden fields of the Americas. But if you look at a can of corned beef, you're looking at a linguistic fossil, a word frozen in a time before refrigerators. In Old England, corn was a generic term for any small, hard particle. It could be a grain of wheat, a seed, or in this case, a coarse crystal of salt. These were the corns that stood between humanity and starvation. Imagine for a moment that you are a 17th century merchant in a dimly lit cellar. Your hands are rough and your skin stings from the sharp, jagged edges of salt corns as you rub them into a raw slab of beef. You aren't just preparing a meal, you are building a fortress. Every grain of salt you press into the fibre draws out the moisture, creating a desert within the meat where bacteria cannot survive. Before we mastered electricity, we mastered the earth. This wasn't a choice made for flavour, it was a desperate, salty victory against the rot of time. Today, when we peel back that metal lid, we aren't just opening a tin, we are breaking a seal on a 400-year-old method of survival. It didn't start in a factory. It began in a world where time was the greatest enemy of food. Before the hum of a refrigerator became the background noise of our lives, keeping meat was a desperate battle. A single spoiled cut could mean weeks of hunger. So humanity turned to the earth's most resilient gift, salt. They called it white gold. Wars were fought for it, and empires were mapped by the roads built to carry it. By the 1600s, Ireland became the beating heart of this salty revolution. The island's emerald pastures raised the finest cattle, while the port of Cork sat at the crossroads of trade, receiving high-quality salt from Spain and Portugal. Now, imagine you're a dock worker in 17th century Cork. The air is thick with the smell of brine and wet wood. Your back aches as you heave heavy oak barrels onto a ship bound for the Americas. You know exactly what's inside. The finest beef, cured to last a year at sea. But as the ship sails away, you realize a bitter truth. You will never taste a single bite of the gold you just loaded. Your own dinner tonight will be a simple plate of potatoes and perhaps a scrap of pork. This was the cruel irony of history. Irish ports grew wealthy exporting Irish corned beef to feed the British Navy and the New World, while the Irish people themselves were too poor to afford their own creation. Today, when we call this dish Irish, it's more than a label. It's a reminder that history often flips the table.
The hands that salted the beef were the last ones allowed to eat it.
What is it about these tiny white grains that makes them so powerful? On the surface, salt seems simple, yet it is one of the few things on Earth capable of holding time still. When salt touches fresh meat, a silent, microscopic battle begins. It's called osmosis, a process where salt relentlessly pulls out the water that bacteria need to survive. No water means no decay. Salt doesn't just fight rot, it outsmarts it. It creates a desert within the muscle fibers, a place where time itself slows down. Now, I want you to look closer. Imagine a single crystal of salt landing on a crimson fiber of beef. You see the moisture being drawn upward, the meat tightening, darkening, becoming a fortress. You aren't just watching a chemical reaction, you are watching a season being locked away. You are witnessing the same patience that allows wine to deepen or cheese to grow richer with age. Every grain acts like a memory, preserving a taste that should have been lost weeks ago. In a way, corned beef isn't just salted meat, it is time, preserved and packed tight. It is a salty bridge that allows a moment from the past to speak to us centuries later, proving that sometimes the most profound flavours are born not from the heat of the fire, but from the stillness of the wait. If you walk into any Irish pub on St. Patrick's Day, the scent of boiled cabbage and salty beef is everywhere, heavy and unmistakable. We've been told for generations that this is the soul of Ireland. But if you were to travel back to the 18th century Irish countryside, you'd find a ghost on that plate. The truth is, the traditional corned beef and cabbage isn't Irish at all. It's an American dream in disguise. In the 1800s, waves of immigrants crossed the Atlantic, fleeing famine with nothing but hope in their pockets. When they landed in the crowded tenements of New York and Boston, they searched for the taste of home. Back in Ireland, their comfort was pork. But in the New World, pork was a luxury they couldn't afford. However, the streets of the city were a melting pot of survival. The Irish settlers found themselves living side by side with Jewish immigrants who had long perfected the craft of salt-curing beef brisket. In a beautiful, silent exchange of cultures, the Irish began buying meat from kosher butchers, applying their own traditions of slow boiling with cabbage and potatoes to this new, affordable beef. What we call tradition today was actually a desperate experiment in adaptation. It wasn't born from a recipe book. It was born from the courage to reinvent identity in a foreign land. Every bite of corned beef today is a tribute to that small miracle, proof that sometimes the food that comforts us most began as a raw struggle to survive. Before it was a breakfast staple, corned beef was an instrument of geopolitical expansion. In the 18th century, the British Empire didn't just sail on wood, it sailed on protein. By saturating beef in corns of coarse rock salt, they created a biological battery, a source of energy that refused to decay. These weren't mere rations, they were the silent crew members that allowed ships to vanish into the Atlantic for months, anchoring the human body against the erosion of the sea. The 20th century then forced this meat into a radical new shape, the trapezoid. This specific geometry wasn't an aesthetic choice, it was a masterpiece of battlefield engineering. Designed to be stacked without a millimetre of wasted space, these tins became the indestructible iron rations of the trenches. Inside, the meat was held in a state of chemical suspension by sodium nitrite, a preservative that locked in its vivid pink hue while the world outside turned to grey. For a soldier, the sharp metallic snap of the tin was the only predictable sound in a landscape of total uncertainty. But the true victory of corned beef happened after the treaties were signed. As empires retreated, Their tins stayed behind, seeding new culinary languages across the globe. It wasn't just food. It was a canvas for local rebellion. In the Philippines, the meat was liberated with heaps of toasted garlic. In the Caribbean, it was set on fire with Scotch bonnet peppers. In the Chachan Tengs of Hong Kong, it was drowned in steaming macaroni broths. What began as a rigid tool of military survival evolved into a universal dialect of comfort.
It proves a singular truth. When you design a food to survive a war, it eventually finds a way to win the peace.
It's a linguistic ghost, isn't it? We still call it corned beef, yet we find ourselves staring at a plate devoid of a single yellow kernel. The answer to this mystery isn't hidden in the brine, but in the tectonic shifts of human language. Centuries ago, before the word corn was conquered by the towering stalks of the New World, it was a humble, universal anchor. It meant anything small, hard, and vital. A grain of wheat, a seed, or a jagged crystal of salt. I want to give you a 10-second rule. The next time you hold a can of corned beef, don't just look at the label, look through it. Spend 10 seconds reflecting on that single word, corned. In those 10 seconds, realize that you are touching a linguistic fossil, a word pressed so deep into our history that it still holds the shape of an ancient world that spoke a different tongue. As the English language sailed across the Atlantic, it met a new king of the fields, maize. Slowly, the old definition was eroded, but the beef refused to change its name. And that is the quiet beauty of the simple things. Food and language are our most faithful archivists. They both possess the sacred gift of memory. A single recipe can bridge a 100-year gap. A solitary word can preserve an entire civilization's way of life. Corned beef is a survivor of both, a dish that outlived the starvation of the Great Famine and a name that outlasted the very dictionary that defined it. Isn't it fascinating how a flavor, much like a ghost, can haunt a world that has long since moved on? In the end, corned beef is more than just a convenient meal on a kitchen shelf. It is a testament to human resilience. It reminds us that when the world gets cold and the journey gets long, we find ways to hold on to our food, to our language, and to each other. What began as a jagged crystal of salt became a bridge across oceans, a sanctuary in the trenches, and a taste of home for those with nowhere else to go. It's a reminder that beauty doesn't always need to be fresh or fancy. Sometimes the most profound stories are the ones that have been salted, pressed, and preserved through the ages. Mastery is often just the courage to endure. And as we've seen today, even a simple tin can can hold the weight of an entire civilization's heart. Between the rugged history of the sea and the warm comfort of a breakfast table, where does your story meet this iron traveller? Let us know in the comments below. If you believe that even the smallest details carry a world of meaning, subscribe and join our investigation.
I'm Edward, and this is QC Project Simple Things. Until next time, stay curious about the simple things. Thank you for watching.